Om Shri Sai Ram, everyone. Samarpan is an opportunity for all of us to reconnect with Bhagwan. Just like we charge our phones, our other devices, and to keep it going, and take our sustenance to keep our bodies going. Events and like Samarpan provide us the opportunity to keep our mind and spirit connected to Bhagwan and keep going. Bhagwan continues to bless us with speakers who have been in his proximity, enjoyed lessons at the divine lotus feet, and are blessed enough, we are blessed to have them share these lessons with us. One such speaker today is Brother Neeraj Acharya, and it is my privilege and blessing to introduce him to all of you today. Brother Neeraj Acharya has been blessed to be born in a family that has been in Swami's fold for over 60 years now, since the 1960s. In the early part of his life, he joined Bal Vikas and was also serving as a volunteer at Dharmakshetra, Swami's abode in Mumbai. During this period, he completed his BE Mechanical from Sardar Patel College of Engineering, Mumbai, and subsequently worked in Mumbai for 2 years before Swami selected him to join the MBA program at the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Prashanthi Nilayam, in 1995. After completing his MBA in 1997, under the divine command, he moved to Jakarta, Indonesia, to work for a large garment export firm for 4 years. His longing to serve Bhagwan in his physical presence brought him back to Prashanthi Nilayam, a place he rightfully considers his real home. Upon his return to Prashanthi Nilayam, Swami personally chose him to serve in the medical division of the Sri Sathya Sai Central Trust in 2001. Subsequently, he went on to serve in various roles, both in the trust and the super specialty hospitals during his 16 years of service at the Divine Lotus Feet. He last served as Senior Manager Administration at the General Hospitals at Prashanthi Nilayam, at the General Hospital in Prashanthi Nilayam. In 2017, he moved back to Mumbai to fulfill his commitment to his parents and has been working with the Tata Group since then. Currently, he holds the position of Director, Finance Operations and Grant Management of the India Health Fund, one of the associate organizations of Tata Trust. Brother Niraj is a tabla player and has been playing with and used to play with the Prashanthi Bhajan group and has participated in several programs in Prashanthi Nilayam and elsewhere. He has also been blessed to accompany Bhagwan to Kodaikanal on many occasions and was a part of Bhagwan's entourage during the divine visit to Harshi and Mumbai in 2009. Sairam brother, we are very blessed to have you with us today and share your insights on the theme, Our Life is His Message. Sairam.
Om Shri Sai Ram. Thanks, Brother Anush, for the introduction and for the warm welcome. And I'm so happy to be with all of you. Having had the previous session physically in Dharmakshetra in 2019, and as the current trend goes, we meet virtually now, and it's such a pleasant moment. I thought today the theme of the interaction, the sort of conversation that we would have, our life is his message, sort of came up from one of the things which I read in Viveka Chudamani, where Bhagwan Shankara tells us the three good fortunes that a human being can have. Of course, the first one is Manushyatvam, Mumukshatvam, and Mahapurusha Sanshraya, which means, of course, getting the good fortune of having the human life. The second one is having the earnest desire for the spiritual inquiry, spiritual quest. And third one is the care and the love of a enlightened sage. We in this August gathering, and of course, as generally as students, and I call everyone as students because Bhagavan is master for all of us. We are indeed, in fact, even more blessed, because for us, it was not the enlightened sage, but it was the not just the Mahapurush. We had the Purushottama, who was and who is our mentor and who is our Sadguru. And based on that, I thought we could speak today about how we could have our life is his message. Because when an avatar descends, his mission is not just limited to the physical, when the physical form is present on earth, but it continues forever. And one of the important components of the avataric mission is his message, which continues for eternity. For example, Bhagwan Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita message that he gave 5,000 years ago still is same vibrant, is still relevant, and will continue to be inspiring millions over decades and centuries. So thought of sharing something on that line based on whatever little learnings that I have had over years with Bhagwan. And what could be the better way than share it in the form of a story, a love story, if we can say, which began in 1995, when, with Bhagwan's immense grace, I was blessed to join his Bhagwan's university, his institution in Prashanti Nilayam. And this particular love story, as expected, has different flavors. So sweet, tangy, spicy, sometimes bitter, and all the flavors as is expected. And I think the life gets its value because of this, right? Because variety is the spice of life. And when all this become combined into one, it makes a wonderful dish. So he makes the life very interesting. So I would share a little bit of my experience on those lines. So 1995, when Swami permitted to join his institute, this was in the month of May. As per the process then, we had to first enroll into the summer course, which would happen at that point of time in the month of May, and then continue from the academic courses in June. So I remember I landed in Vrindavan Ashram, where the summer course was held in 1995. I think it was 19th May, if I remember. And the course was starting on 20th May. I landed in Vrindavan somewhere in the afternoon and registered and was checked in, so to say. I was directed to go to the room which was allotted. And when I went to the room, it is a dormitory room with about 15 people sharing the room. A room which typically houses about 8, but during the summer course, since Vrindavan and Prashanti Nilayam, both the campuses are in one place, we have to share the same hostel. So there are about 15 students in one room. Looks a bit, challenging, right? Because I had never stayed away from home till then. All my studies, it was in Mumbai, from home. And I had never stayed in hostel. And this was the first time I ever had a hostel life. This apparent challenge had no issues, and I will come to that later. The food was a bit different, bit spicy, but you know how to manage that. No issues with that. I remember the days since all of us couldn't occupy the same room in the night to sleep. So we used to go to the terrace and sleep on the terrace under the open sky. And that had its own beauty. Sometimes it would rain in the night and we rush back to room. All these apparent, why I'm saying this is all these apparent challenges or inconveniences actually didn't have any impact, because I think the principle is that if our mind is peaceful, calm, the external thing really don't matter. And that is experience all through subsequently. Is all that is dependent on what happens here. And that was a big lesson for me in those days in hostel. In fact, in a way, our batch, I would say, was a little more fortunate, because what I understand, 2 batches before us till 1993, there are not even fans in the rooms in the hostel. Something which is very, could appear strange, but that was never a concern for anyone. So how we see the life is based on what happens internally. How we are internally is how the world appears to be. That was the lesson, the first lesson that I learned in Bhagwan's hostel when I joined. As any student would wish for, one of the reasons I wanted to study in Bhagwan's college was not just a degree, but definitely that unique opportunity of living with Bhagwan and the possibility as a student of getting little closer to him physically, right? Whether it is probable glances, looks, or sambhashanam, speech, some conversation, or sparshanam, path namaskar, or his divine touch, whatever. And that was definitely a craving at that point for me also. So during the summer course, there were a couple of occasions I could be closer to Bhagwan, but there was generally no such event where he sort of, I couldn't get any path namaskar, or there was no sambhashanam or such. I took it as his blessing. In the month of beginning of June, we came to Prashant in India to start our course. And Swami came somewhere around 9th or 10th of June. The routine was different in Prashant in India. I'm going to college, going to evening to the mandir. And the system of lottery continues, whether you're a devotee or you're a student. So we have lotteries for going to mandir, which are drawn in the hostel, and you go as per the lines. And most of the times the number may not be that good. So I used to sit wherever the opportunity came. And still the heart used to crave that for some sort of a physical interaction, probably some conversation with Bhagwan. But then Swami has his own ways, own time, appropriate time, and instance, and what he wants to do at that appropriate time is never what is the right time from our perspective. It's the divine time from his perspective. So it was almost in the month of August, one afternoon darshan, I got not that great number in the lottery. So I remember going little late in the mandir, and I sat in what is called at that point the block number 4, which is the farthest block from where Swami would sit. So that is currently in front of Samadhi, where the Bhajan group sits. That is the block number 3 at that point of time. And the one even behind that was block number 4. And that was the only block available when I reached Mandir, and I sat there. So darshan was beautiful. I enjoyed the music and Swami's the movement, divine atmosphere. Swami went to the interior room. After some time, came out. And there was some work happening at that point of time in a place where currently the statues of Lord Ramachandra, Lakshman, and Sita Ma is there. At that place, that time, there was a huge tree, and there was some work going on there. And so Swami came out from interior room and went to inspect that work. He walked to that side, and when he came back, instead of walking from the side where there was a walkway, when he came, he just asked us like this to students. That means we have to part way between the block and he would walk from the middle of the block. Then we quickly moved and created a path for Swami to walk. And it just happened that the path was right next to me. That means I was right next to the walkway where Swami will pass by. And Swami came walking and looked at me. And that was, of course, the first sort of a physical interaction I had with Bhagwan. He looked at me and asked me one question. Very, 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 very potent question. What he asked me was, where did you come from? This was the exact question in English he asked. Where did you come from? And I had mixed emotions at that point. Joy of having Swami conversing, at the same time, some apprehension of what would come next or whatever. And I just got up on my knees and I told Bhagwan, Swami, from Mumbai, from Bombay. And Swami looked at me, smiled, and just walked on. And no further conversation after that on that topic. And typically it happens when you later on reflect, you feel, okay, what should have probably answered, or what was Swami expecting? I kept inquiring about it, but much later I realized the greatness of that question that Swami asked. Whenever Swami speaks or does something, there is a very, very deep purpose. It's not just a superficial question. So the question he asked me was, where did you come from? At the outer physical level, of course, which place you came from, that is obviously the general understanding that goes. But for me, that sort of became a sort of an inquiry to look into, where do you come from? Where do I come from? And that made me go into that mode of inquiry over years. And much later, I realized the importance of that question and how important it is to seek that answer. Whether you get or not is a process which happens. But what I realized is Bhagwan is such a wonderful master. He guides you on the path of inquiry without being too formal about it. Right? Through a simple incident like this, he gave a very, very profound message which remained for the rest of my life. And that was my first learning as a student with Bhagwan. That find out where you come from. And the exact wording Swami used was, where did you come from? And that was my first learning at Bhagwan's feet. So this was in August 95. And the next, moving forward, I would share with you the next incident, next learning, which happened in December of 95. There was a medical conference which was happening, and Swami had selected some students to serve the dignitaries who came for that conference. There were a lot of international delegates also. And I was one of the students who was selected. And Swami, in his grace, would give us a chance to interact. I mean, work was only a small part of it, but then the chance we got to interact with Bhagwan was something amazing, to listen to him and learn from him. So one of such sessions in Purnachandra Auditorium, that time Swami used to stay in Purnachandra Auditorium. There was a room which was for him. And one day he had called us, all the students there. And some work was given, and we finished that work. And after the finishing the work, we came and sat near Swami, and Swami started talking. Swami inquired with most of the students what we were doing, what about our families, and so many things. And Swami said, "बहुत काम किया, अभी थोड़ा कुछ खाओ. You have done a lot of work. Let's have something. Let's eat something." And he told the teachers, "Bring." And that day, one very senior devotee, he had farms and he used to donate a lot of very premium quality fruits to Bhagwan. And that day he had sent fresh papayas from his farm. So Swami got the papayas and asked the people around to cut it and distribute to all the students. And we also went, helped. We cut the papayas into pieces, and two pieces were given to every student. And we were sitting next to Bhagwan, and all of us holding the papayas in the plate. And Swami said, huh, cow. I was feeling a bit awkward at that point. How? Because Swami didn't have anything to eat, right? And you're sitting in front of Swami, and how do we eat when Swami is not having anything? So, out of my sort of love for him, I just extended my plate to Swami. I was sitting down on the floor, and Swami was sitting on the chair. So I just held up my plate and requested Bhagwan if he could have the papaya. Swami said, by action, he said, not required. So I just requested again by through action, Swami, please. So Swami picked up a small piece of papaya from that and put it in his mouth, and he said, "Huh, ab khao." That was a prasadam which became a mahaprasadam for me. And of course, I had the fruit. And once we all finish eating, Swami said, "Ha, abhi jao, wash karo. Wash your hands," since we had eaten papaya. So all of us went inside and washed our hands and came back to the hall where Swami was sitting. And as I was walking back to the place, Swami just got hold of my hand. Just said, "Baito, idhar baito." He asked me, "Sit here." And he made me sit right next to his feet on the right hand side. And then Swami was talking to us. And suddenly, at one point, Swami looked at me and said, asked me, "What do you want?" And at that point, I was in such a state of, what should I say, bliss or love or happiness. I really, really, really didn't have anything to ask for. I said, "Nothing, Swami." He said, "Kya chahiye? Mango, what do you want?" I said, "Nothing, Swami. I don't want anything." Swami again persisted. "Kuch mango. What do you want?" And as a spontaneous expression at that point, I just told Bhagwan, "Swami, I want you. I want you. Nothing else. I want you." And Swami was apparently very pleased with that answer. And he gave a beautiful smile. And then he waved his hand and created a ring and put it into my right hand. Just on the side part of it, how perfectionist that Bhagwan is. And this is the same ring, which this was 14th December 1995. And ever since he gave, that ring has been such a perfect fit right from the first day. And little more for in my scenario, because since I play tabla and right hand is used prominently, typically when we play tabla, there is a risk of the ring getting hit on the tabla and might break. So we are advised to remove it and put it in the pocket or move it to the other hand, which I do normally. And that ring has been such a fit. It's neither too tight nor too loose. I can easily remove and shift it whenever I play tabla. But it has been that perfect fit, how the way the master has designed it all through, right from that time. So anyway, coming back to this one, that was the second incident where when Swami asked me, "What do you want?" And I had nothing to ask from him except his love and grace. And when I answered him that I want you, I honestly, I didn't know exactly what I meant. I think it was a spontaneous expression. But later on, when I thought about it, I thought, what else do you want in life other than Bhagwan, which means, Bhagwan doesn't mean his form, but Bhagwan means to live his message, to be the way he wants us to be. And I remember one incident in this context. One of the very senior functionaries of Prashant Nilayam, that time he was a very senior IAS officer before he moved. This was in early 90s, or I think early 80s. He had come as the senior government official, and Swami called him for interview. And as would always happen. It was such a mesmerizing session. He tells that he and his wife, and Swami spent a lot of time with them. And after some time, Swami said, "I want to give you something, some clothes." And Swami went in to bring the clothes. And when he was sitting in the interview room, his eyes fell on a beautiful portrait of Bhagwan, which was there next to Swami's chair on his table. And he was fascinated with that photo. He was staring at that photo, and Bhagwan came from behind, and he asked him, "Kya dekhta? What are you seeing?" And he said, "Swami, that photo is very nice. Can I take it?" He had the audacity to ask that. At that time, I was new to Bhagwan, and I asked him, "Can I take it?" And the unimitable way of response that only Bhagwan can give, Swami said, "Nannu tiskunpo," in Telugu, which means, "Why photo? You take me and go." So obviously, Swami didn't mean that physically, but the message which Bhagwan gave was, when you are in touch with Bhagwan, Bhagwan's message and his principles should come with you wherever you are. And that is something which I learned from this episode, where when Swami asked, "What you want?" I realized the only thing that we can ever ask from Bhagwan is he himself, which is his love, his grace, his blessings, and giving us that ability and the patrata, the eligibility to live by his values, stand by his values, and to live by his message. So that was the second lesson I learned in Bhagwan's Sannidhi. But then a Sadguru he lays down such a beautiful path for you. The way in an educational curriculum you have various subjects which are lined up. Swami has his own way of teaching his subject. Moving forward, I completed my MBA course in 1997. And at that point, I was absolutely certain that I would stay back in Prashanti and work for Swami. Swami had different plans, which came up much later. So 1997, after I gave my exams, and that year Swami blessed me with a visit to Kodaikanal. And during that visit, suddenly one day Swami opened it to me that he said that now that you have completed your MBA, you should go out and work. And I was absolutely unprepared for it. I never thought I would ever go away from Prashanti. And I pleaded to Bhagwan, "No, Swami, I want to be with you." And Swami, there is a big story which I think I covered in my previous session, so I won't repeat it again. But Swami somehow ensured that I go. In fact, I remember that instance, and I wanted to recollect the small piece which gave me that message. In that interview, when my parents, my brothers, and me, we were there in the interview, and when Swami was telling me about going out and working, and all of us were sort of, what should I say, not negotiating, but persuading Swami that no, I have to be in Prashanti. At one point, Swami became very stern, and he said, and this is the message he gave. He said, I was again at that point sitting right next to him near his chair on the right hand side, and he just tapped on my head and said, "Hey, जो मैं बोलता हूँ वो सुनो। जैसे अर्जुना ने लॉर्ड कृष्णा को बोला, करिष्ये वचनम तव, तुम भी ऐसा बोलो, करिष्ये वचनम तव, और जो मैं बोलता हूँ वो करो. It is good for you." Unquote. This is the message Swami gave. And it was so powerful. All of us became quiet after that. No more persuasion, no more discussion on that topic. But such an important message which has stayed with me for rest of my life, that if we are his students, if we are his shishyas, Karishye Vachanam Tava is the promise that we have to give and we have to stand by, right? Because that's the only thing that a guru wants. He doesn't need, and avatar doesn't need anything. Everything has come from him. But the least that we can give and he would be happy with is to reciprocate his love and to live by his message and values. So that was the third important lesson I got from Bhagwan, still almost in my student days, not yet come to my working life. This was in 1997. And there are many more lessons to come ahead. I went out as Swami wanted. I was abroad for 4 years. Having said that, I always, in my heart, wanted to be in Prashanti and serve it. So Swami was very kind that whenever I came from Jakarta to have his darshan, he would call for interviews quite often. And one of those interviews, this was in year 2000, Swami asked me, "Tumhara kaam kaise chal raha hai? How is your work happening?" So I said, "Swami, work is happening well, but mera dil idhar hai. My heart is here. I want to be with you." Swami smiled and he said, "I am always with you. I am in you, with you, around you, below you, above you. So what is the matter?" So I thought it was a deflection that Swami was making, sort of to pacify me. But a great message that Bhagwan gave was that it's fine that you having the desire to be in the physical proximity, but you must understand that Swami, apart from the physical form, he's there with us everywhere, wherever we are. And that message at that point maybe didn't convey that strongly to me, but subsequently it has become so relevant, especially after 2011, that to give us that comfort and to give us that confidence that Swami is always with us every moment. And this, he had given this message to me that time way back in 2000, before even I moved to Prashanti. He permitted to come back in 2001. And that was another great blessing that I could come and serve Bhagwan for 16 years. And during those times, again, there were next set of messages to come. So it happened in 2003. Swami made a visit to Kodaikanal, and that time he permitted me to join. I was the last person added in that group. I remember Sunday morning, the trip had to begin from Whitefield, Vrindavan, and Saturday evening, Swami called me in Trai Vrindavan and told that, get ready, you have to join the Kodaikanal group. A very pleasant surprise to me then. And when I came back to hostel and when I spoke to Warden, I realized that in that group, in that particular batch, there was no one having a camera. So I realized, and I had a good camera at that point of time. So I realized that is one of the things which I need to be careful about and perform my duties. Keep the camera with me always and ensure that the event is captured, including the photos with the participants, which become a memory for lifetime. So I was prepared for that. And in fact, I remember I even ordered I didn't have a good flashlight at that point of time. I ordered it immediately. It came up on Saturday night. So Sunday morning, I could take it with me. So when I went to Kodaikanal, in the group, I was the only one who had a good camera, and there was another senior devotee who was called. Even he had, only two of us had a camera, and we covered the whole entire visit in terms of capturing the photos, no videos that point of time. Now, one incident in that visit, which I thought of sharing, in that particular Kodaikanal visit, apart from the students, Swami had also taken a group of Sevadal from Trai Vrindavan, about 8 or 9 of them, doing wonderful seva. And Swami brought with him these 9 people to Kodaikanal. And they were part of all the sessions along with us. So somehow they had not got the individual photos that we had got. So it happened just about a day or two before we were supposed to return back from Kodaikanal. One evening, Swami asked the group in charge, ask all the Vrindavan, those 9 students, to come and be in the porch of Sai Shruti, Swami's residence, and I will give them something. So Swami actually wanted to give them watches, distribute watches. So he called for the watches, and the students were waiting, and Swami went and started distributing. This was, I realized, is a very good opportunity for those students, because if I capture the photos well, that will become a lifetime memory. So I was prepared. I was there near the place where Swami was distributing. There was another advantage of being a camera person, because then you can move wherever Swami goes. So I was there. And when Swami started distributing the watches, I realized the students were, say, here, and Swami was here, and I was on this side. So when I was taking the photograph, the students were covering each other. They were not seen. So I realized I have to move a little bit, 2 or 3 steps ahead, so that I can capture photos in such a way that all of them are seen. So everybody will get a good photo, which they can preserve. So I moved 3, 4 steps ahead to position myself well, so that I can capture everyone in the photograph. Probably that was a blunder that sort of disturbed Bhagwan. And he looked at me, and very sternly he said, "Hey, don't take such photo." And I just froze at that moment, because he was quite serious about it. And I just quickly dropped my camera and rushed inside, because when Swami is not happy, you need to move out of that place, because he doesn't expect you to be there. So I moved back to the room, to the hall. And but having said that, the typical human ego plays its tricks, and I thought I was telling Bhagwan in my mind, see, Bhagwan, I had nothing to get from those photos, right? My only intention was I can capture the photo well, so that it will become a good memory for the students, for the Vrindavan Seva. That was the only intention. But why is it then that you felt it was wrong, and why is that you sort of got angry with me for that? Of course, no answers immediately, and I realized that day I was so sort of disturbed. This was in the afternoon. In the late evening, I didn't have my dinner. I decided I will not eat dinner. So typically dinner happens in 2 batches. So first batch, of course, I didn't go. That's the batch with whom Swami eats. And then typically it would happen that first batch finishes the dinner, Swami comes out, retires to his room, and he tells the second batch to have dinner. I didn't want to wait there, because I thought Swami will see that, no, I'm there, and it may again disturb him. So in fact, I remember that day, I left the hall and went to the bhajan hall, which was about a few meters away. Just sat there, thinking about the same episode. Our mind always keeps repeating the same thing. Why this happened? Why that happened? And all those. Much later, I realized the message that Bhagwan wanted to give was, at that point, in my understanding, I had considered that it is my privilege. I'm the only photographer having a very good camera with me. So that sort of a doership had come up. And in fact, I remember just a few days ago during that visit, one day afternoon, Swami was just going around in the residence, the hall of the residence, where all of us were sitting. And he was walking by, and that time you're not supposed to click, because he's very close and it will disturb him. So I had kept the camera in my lap. So Swami looked at me and said in Telugu, "Yemira, anta pedda camera pettunnave? What is this that you're keeping such a big camera with you in your lap?" That sort of a question. And after this incident happened, I realized I had got that sort of a doership, or sort of a prestige of the only student having camera at that point of time in that group. And once the doership comes, Swami's connection is lost, because what I realized, the lesson for me in that episode was, if Swami gives you work, do the work with complete sincerity. Who does the work is Swami who gets it done, and it's not your credit. And that's one learning I had from that episode. Keep dropping the doership, and it requires a practice. I'm definitely not uh, perfect in it even now, but that is something that reminds me every time that whenever whenever this thing comes up in the mind that I am doing something or I am holding this role, it's never like that. It is Swami who's getting it done. So that was a lesson which he taught, which has remained again with me for rest of my life. On a similar context, uh, let me add one more episode. In this was thing in 2004. One morning in Prashanti Nilayam, Swami had taken the darshan round, and as he came to the portico, and I was sitting in the portico, he came near me and he asked me a question: "How is the work?" So I just responded to him saying that, "Swami, with your grace, it is going on well." This was the, I said in Hindi, "Aapki kripa se sab theek chal raha hai, sir." Swami was apparently very happy with that answer. So he said, good boy," and patted on the back and went. Sort of to corroborate the understanding which I had was, when you do work, if you offer it to Bhagwan, take it as his grace, his blessing, and drop that aspect of doership or that ego which comes along with that. That's the thing which Swami appreciates. So that is a learning which with Swami's grace I could have. So coming next, moving on, it from 2004 2005, as Swami's physical health was a bit weak, it was quite often that he would look at you, may not look at you. I was in the bhajan group, but there were many instances, many days in which it would happen. Swami will look, Swami will smile, and you feel nice. And there were many days you're sitting right in front of him, just about 3 feet away, and he won't even look at you as if you are not existing. And that was very typical of Bhagwan. But that was something which taught me so many lessons that, for Bhagwan, he's not attached to anything that happens externally. And I'll give you one example to this. In Kodaikanal, for about 25 days or 1 month that the visit will be, all of us will be so close to Bhagwan, spending almost 8 to 9 hours a day in his proximity. Having 4 sessions, dining sessions with Bhagwan. And at one point, you almost feel that Swami is part of your group. You take sometimes some liberty. Happens. But the best part, what happens is when we come back to Vrindavan, typically at those days, whenever Swami is to come back from Kodaikanal, he will reach Vrindavan, and the entourage will also follow. And the best part was, the moment we land in Vrindavan, immediately after that, next darshan you go, and Swami may not even look at you. And I used to wonder, how is it humanly possible that till yesterday we live together as if we are part of one picnic, having conversations, having food together, joking, bhajans, singing together, all those things. And right next, within few moments, completely detached. Big learning for me, because that's how Bhagwan is. He was in his avataric form whenever he was with us. I realized that when he did something, he was completely in that event, that activity that he would do, be fully into that. But the moment that activity is over, that is over. That chapter is closed. He moves on. And I would like to share one incident about this. This happened in Vrindavan. I'm not sure of which year it was. 98, I guess. Swami had come to Vrindavan and there was a news that he will stay there for a while. But suddenly one day, it happened that Swami decided that he should go back to Prashanti Nilayam. It was out of a sudden news. The bags were getting packed. The car was getting ready, and the students were in college, and the message went that Swami is leaving for for Prashanti Nidya. So all the students came running to train to sort of. Anyway, we used to come to try whenever Swami was leaving from Vrindavan to Prashanti. So all the students came, and with the discussion with teachers, they thought we can request Bhagwan to stay back, because apparently the reason Swami gave was that the students are not following the advice which I have given. They don't care for it. So there is no point staying here. I'm going back. So when this was discussed within the student community and the teachers, we felt that we should request Swami that please seek pardon and please stay back. So this was planned, and all the students waited near the door from where Swami would come out. And as Swami stepped out of the door, the students went very close, what we used to call as sort of ghera. We just went around him. And there were a few students next to Swami, and they started pleading to Swami, Swami, please forgive us. Please don't go. I said, no, no, no. You don't have value for Swami's words. I'm going. And the things continued back and forth. And at one point, the students caught hold of Swami's hand, feet, saying that, Swami, please don't go. Please don't leave us and go. And apparently, Swami became very wild. And he just gave a smack to the first student. Hey, go away. Don't catch my feet. But how a avatar is, you can imagine that event. Swami is coming out of the Vrindavan door, the residence door. So typically, the way it is on the right-hand side is the gents devotees, which is students and teachers and some of the senior devotees. And on the left-hand side, there are lady devotees who are there and lady staff. So Swami here, he gave a smack to this student. The moment he turned to the left-hand side and all the lady devotees were praying to him fervently, he just was back to his blessing mode and he started blessing them. Again, he put one step forward. Next student came and caught hold of his hand. Swami, please don't go. One more smack to that. Swami again looks to this side, to ladies' side. They are all praying. Again, Swami goes into a blessing mode. This happened with 3 students. Anyway, the thing from this episode is, how is it possible humanly that if you are angry, in one moment there is an expression of anger, is it possible in the next moment you can go to a peaceful state or a joyful blessing state? Humanly impossible. But Bhagwan showed that when he does something, there is a purpose, and second thing is he's not attached to it. He's not getting swayed away by it. If that anger which has come, that is an expression to correct the person, but it doesn't make Bhagwan angry. Otherwise, it's not possible that right next moment you start blessing a devotee who is on the other side. So this was, I was not directly present in this particular episode, but I was told by one of the teachers who was there at that point. And I just imagined and I realized that if we remain in that sort of a detached state, in whichever activity we do in our life, that's the way Bhagwan would expect us to be in the world, but not be attached to it. That's how he wants us, right? Because Swami never wanted that anybody should go to, say, seclusion or nothing of that. When you are in the world, do your duty in the world, but never be attached. And this incident sort of gave me a guidance on how you could be in the worldly duties, but at the same time remain detached from it. So that was another learning which I had with Bhagwan. And I would suggest at this point, I would suggest a few things which I've gathered when I reflected back on my learnings. I would like to share that and have close this session and probably have some conversation. I thought we can have 4 E's as our learning from our life. And that can be for anybody, not just for me. First E for me is the examine. Examine your life. Examine the experience that Swami has given you. So for me, it was whatever experiences during my student days, my working days. Examine your life. Once you examine what has happened, if you, whatever the learnings that you get, if start experimenting with those learnings, right? Because what you've learned needs to be put into action. So start experimenting. So the second E is experimenting, experiment. And what emerges out of is the third E, which is the experience. What you experience from there. And this sort of experimenting and experience, that cycle continues till you come at a point where that particular learning is established within you. And if we follow our life in this way, examine what events, what situations Swami has got us through and gave us learnings, experiment with those learnings, have the experience of whatever the outcome is. Sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not work. And then accordingly, you change your experimentation. So examine, experiment, experience. And once that becomes part of you, you get established in those learnings, and that becomes part of your life. And at the end of it, probably you become an example. You become an example of what Swami would like his student, his disciple, his shishya to be. And if we keep this thing in mind and apply that, I would like to leave this thought with all the participants. Let's examine, let's experiment, experience, and establish in the learnings that Swami has given. And that would ensure that our lives will be fulfilled and we become a real example of his message. And that's the time we can say our life has become his message. Thank you very much. Om Shri Sai.
Thank you so much, brother. So thank you so much. I think there is so much that we have gathered in this in this very brief 1 hour that we've had, that you have spoken. The chat, this thing window is open. So, anybody, viewers, anyone who has any questions, request you all to please type them out and share any questions. We'll be more than happy to put them before Brother Niraj, and he can share based on his insights and his experience. Because, reflections, I think a lot of what I picked up from this talk by you, brother, is that, I think a lot of your insights have come after the effect upon reflection, and that is probably one lesson that we could all take, whether it is our own experience with Bhagwan or whatever we have heard. I think we should make time to reflect and understand what Bhagwan is actually trying to tell us. So one question has come up, and that is, how should we connect with Swami within, especially in these times?
Good question, and it's something that I think all of us need to find out for ourselves. I think there is no one answer to it. My thoughts are on this are like this. Swami is a Jagat Guru. He is a guru for all of us, and each one of us are made in a different mold. And we have to find which path helps us. And that could be different for different people. Just for example, few things, or let me share what I do when I have to connect with Bhagwan, especially after post his physical departure. For me, one of the ways I could sort of closely connect to Bhagwan was in the bhajan hall, when we as bhajan group would sit right next to Bhagwan, just few feet away, and watch him when the beautiful bhajans will go on in the background. That sort of is always imprinted in my heart. So one of the ways I connect is whenever I get free time or whenever I'm in a bhajan session, I typically recollect those memories of being in the bhajan hall, looking at Bhagwan's form, and that connects me quite closely. And this gives a comfort of one, feeling his closeness is that's one. And this really helps when you're in a situation you want some sort of a guidance or some sort of a message from Bhagwan, because probably at that point there are various things which are happening which are challenging, and you need some sort of a guidance or a blessing from him. And I found that works for me to connect with him. It helps you to connect, though Bhagwan is always with us, but always there is some sort of a medium required to connect. For me, it is when I visualize that form of him, and that becomes sort of a what you call naam and the darshan, the meditation on both the things together, whether we are singing bhajan or just doing any namasmaran and just keeping his form in front of you. That is one way of connecting. For many people, it happens by doing seva and seeing Swami in the person that he or she is being served. So he has given us various ways. I think what appeals to each one of us is something that we need to examine and find out, because ultimately Swami took that form for us to ultimately connect to his cosmic presence, because that any form for that matter or anything which comes in the world, whatever comes has to go. In fact, there is a wonderful saying I came across recently in Taoism. There is a saying that when the student is ready, the guru appears. When the student is really ready, the guru disappears. And it made a lot of impact on me. Of course, there the reference is the physical form of the guru. So the avatar appears when the student is ready, and the avatar will take out his physical form when he feels that the shishya is now ready to go to the next level. So I would say, if the moments that Swami has given us, in whichever way, whichever experience that we have, or the message that he has given, if we can follow that message, which ultimately has to have the ultimate endpoint, that how to see Swami not just limited to that physical form, but to see that Swami in everyone. And I will give one example to sort of maybe substantiate this point. This was shared by one of my senior students who was there. This was in 1988. Swami had finished the program in Purnachandra Hall, and he had come to interview room, and he called the India boys, and he was discussing about the discourse that he gave in Purnachandra Auditorium. I remember Nanjundaya sir, the controller of examiner, was also in that conversation. And he told me this, that in the interview room, Swami asked, how was the discourse? What did you learn from it? So Swami had spoken about bhakti. So the student whom Swami asked, he said, Swami, bhakti is okay for me, but for me, Jnana Marg is something which appeals a lot. Swami said, no difference, both are same. And he waved his hand and created cards. And they exactly happened to be 27. There were 26 students and a Nanjundaya sir. As Swami distributed, it is exactly 27 distributed to all the people in the interview. And that particular card, which I saw, the photo which was shown to me by the student, is a very unique photo. I have not seen this elsewhere. It's a black and white photo in which we have two Swamis facing each other and talking to each other, and which was a very surprising photo. And Swami explained what that means. He said, see, when you are in the world, know that Swami is within you And Swami is also in the other person you are interacting. So that's why you see Swami talking to another Swami. That is one message. But there's something else to come. Swami said, it may happen that the other Swami may misbehave, may not behave the way you want it, but you remain the good Swami. This is a message he gave to the people. So what I wanted to share was that at one point of time with our practice and whichever mode that we are comfortable with, we should come to a point to experience and get established that Swami is within us and is there in everything or everyone that whom we interact with. And if that is done through the means that whichever is sort of is suitable for each one of us, we should find out whatever appeals to us more. It could be bhajans, it could be namasmaran, it could be meditation for few, or it could be seva for few. Any of those paths, Swami has created different pathways to reach to the same end point. And we have to see which one appeals to us the most and pick it up. We have to keep experimenting. That's what I thought we should examine, experiment and see what experience it gives. If it appeals to you, take it as a way forward and carry on.
Wonderful. Bhagwan had told you that I am always with you. Ever since the Mahasamadhi, have you had any experiences of Bhagwan's presence with you? Something that you would like to share? Because there might be so many of us, so many devotees who have come to Bhagwan after his leaving the mortal coil. So these experiences would really be something that everyone would cherish to know.
In terms of Swami's presence, as far as my experience goes, not in the form of any dreams or as such of any sort of coincidences that we say, but what Swami has made me realize is every time you feel that there is a challenging situation in life, I have always felt that the moment you remember him, the situation around you may remain challenging, but the way the things go forward, you get solutions which you would never would have thought of. And that could happen only with the divine grace. And that has happened on multiple instances, whether it is in the work front or some of the things when my father was unwell. At every time, I realized if we remain in the state of gratitude that whatever Swami is doing, he shows you the way he would help through maybe, I mean, the recent example I would give you when my father was unwell. The way the things would happen in the hospital or post, currently he's with Bhagwan, but post that, the way the things happened, I realized that it just can't be coincidence. The way the blessings came, the way the whole ceremonies went on. We realized that, you know, for me, the thing was that it allowed me to sort of expand that identity of Bhagwan, it not be limited to the physical form that I had experienced, but it really gave me a chance to know that he is there with us every moment, and he can show his presence from anyone whom you come up with. And otherwise, as such, in terms of any direct experience, not such, but when you remember Swami in every act or every situation that you go through, he would give you indication that what happens is something which happens only with the divine will. And if that sort of attitude is kept in mind, that would guide you in living your life. And that's what my experience is.
So yeah, I mean, I think that leads us to one question which has been asked. So how do we remain in this constant integrated awareness?
Whenever in the current age of virtual connectivity, we know that even Wi-Fi is uncertain, right? We don't know when it clicks, when it breaks. So true, I have found even in my personal experience, it's a matter of practice. I think mind is the spoil sport, and as Swami said that he is always with you, but when our mind plays on us, that time the disconnect happens. So if we find a way to sort of calm down our mind through whatever means, again we have to see what works, whether it could be chanting, it could be bhajans, or it could be even reading Swami's literature, or listening to his discourse, or being in service, another thing where you can just get lost in the attitude of seva, and in that way your ego and your mind also gets broken. So this is a process, a practice which I think all of us have to continue to ensure his connect. Swami used to say this, that my grace is like a shower of rain. When the shower of rain happens, it rains everywhere around you. It depends on how you keep your pot turned. If you keep your pot turned in the right direction, you will capture his grace. So similarly, his grace, his blessings are always there. We have to keep practicing that our pot never tilts down. Keep it aligned to Bhagwan and we will fill. It's a matter of practice. I don't think any one of us are perfect, but we are all on the path leading towards that. And if we keep practicing it with Bhagwan's grace, we will reach that state of what Swami used to call as continuous integrated awareness.
I think that analogy of Swami's grace and the pot, is something very, very significant. I remember my Hindi teacher in school saying that there are some students who sit with the pot, and then there are some students who sit with the chalni. Right? So we see it and then let it go. So yeah, I think it's then there are several questions. Let me just scroll. You mentioned an important point of letting go of the sense of doership. Would you suggest any practice to achieve this state of mind?
Yeah, it's not easy. First thing, it's not easy. It's typical because the way our mind functions, that we get attached to the work we do or the role we hold. I found it happens many times, but one practice which helped me was every day, at least once, if not during the daytime, this can be done any point of the day, is the practice of showing gratitude. If we just keep on remembering that whatever happens, it is Bhagwan's blessing, and let me pay my gratitude to whatever that I'm going through. And at the end of the day, have that small conversation of gratitude with Swami for all the nice things or whatever things that he did in that day, and pray to him before you wind up and go to sleep. Keeping that attitude of gratitude, that helps a lot to drop that sort of getting entangled into doership or the ego that comes along with that, which I have found it very useful.
The next question ties back to the first experience that you had shared when Bhagwan asked you, where did you come from? And
I'm yet to get the answer.
I remember as a student, we had been coached, sometimes that, not coached exactly, but told that if Bhagwan asks you this question, his favorite answer is Swami from you. But there is a knowing and there is a realizing. Right? So how do we realize this answer for ourselves?
For any educational institution, wherever we are, right? Whenever we learn something, I realized when I was learning, say, mathematics in my school, or I would say, let me take the subject which I didn't like. I didn't like biology when I was in my school. And the reason I opted in my 11th, I opted a technical specialization just because I could drop biology and, for at least for 2 years. And I would never touch biology again, is what I felt. But one thing I realized is subsequently, of course, is a different thing that Swami put me into medical field, and I had to revise my fundas. But what I'm trying to say is that when we learn something, like say in schooling, at that point, whether it is mathematics or biology, it didn't make sense at that point of time. But later on, when you actually go into your work life, you realize the theorems or the principles you learned of mathematics or what you learned in biology is something that applies later. At that point, it didn't make sense to me, but later on, it's like I'm reminded of the beautiful incident. If we have seen that in the movie of Karate Kid, where the coach tells the small child student, the only practice he tells him while teaching karate is, he has a jacket, remove the jacket, put it on the bar, take it down, lift it up, put it on. And he keeps on continuing for months. And the student gets frustrated with it. Till later, when he finally shows his frustration, the teacher tells him how through those various actions, actually he has learned various steps of karate. And he shows him by example, by making different movements. The act of removing the coat is one move of karate, how we can use it. And it made a lot of impact on me. And that's how I think it happened even with Bhagwan, to me and probably to all of us. When Swami tells you something, at that point, it is only a sort of a understanding. That time it's just more of a piece of information or knowledge. But when it comes from Bhagwan and we take it seriously and we start applying it, that time I felt it gives you that experience. And that's why I thought of these 4 E's that I coined. I thought that made sense to me when I reflected on my life. If you experiment on whatever learnings you have, unless you experiment, you cannot, those will all remain only as textbook theorems. So only when we experiment something, it will give you some experience. It may work, it may not work, and then you decide. If it doesn't work, drop it. If it works, take it on. So unless we start experiment with whatever we have learned, that is the only way we will find how that thing works. And it is again a matter of practice. Life is a continuous game. You keep on moving on. I remember that famous statement of Ustad Zakir Hussain, one of my role models in tabla. And in one of the interviews, he told the interviewer, the question was about various things he has learned and how does he practice. And he said that even today, when I practice tabla, I remember the things which I learned from my father 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And that shows me in a different way, and I get different learning from it. And that's the way I keep on improving and perfecting myself. And the last statement he made, which was so powerful, he said, the day I think I have learned enough, that is the day I should pack my bags and go away. So it's never ending. Life is a journey of learning and moving on. And only when we start experimenting with the learnings that we have had, then only we will find a way to move on. And it's a process of iteration and moving on. It's a practice.
We have a few more questions. You spoke because you also just mentioned experience. So what comes first, faith or experience?
Depends on what we call about faith. I think at one point, faith is a very tricky word, and it depends on what we understand faith is. But in my limited understanding, if what is important as a faith is the faith in the divine power, which is always with us. For us, it may be Bhagwan. For somebody else, it may be anybody else, or it could be even a formless energy principle. If that faith is there, that in my view gives you experience which will make you establish in the learnings from there. So a bit of a tricky question of what we consider as faith, but if we have the faith in the divine energy that governs the whole universe, that takes care of whatever you go through.
Another very beautiful question. You mentioned that this was a love story with God. So, what are the first steps one should take to commence this love story?
Love story has to begin with love, and that's why probably some sort of a answer to the previous question. With Bhagwan, Swami used to say that, by the way, that a child, when the child is born, does the child have a proof of his mother, his or her mother? It's by the experience and the feeling and the affection that the child has for the mother. The child has a faith that she is my mother, right? So he says that sort of a conviction or that sort of a indication that comes from your heart would connect you to your guru, which in our case could be Bhagwan. So if that connection happens, then the love flows by itself, and that's how the story begins. And that love, as I said, it is always may not be sweet, and it cannot be, because the life has to have different flavors. So it will give you different flavors, and that will make your life a more enriching and enjoyable experience. And we have to just love whichever flavors come from the way, because Swami said this once, that whatever happens, just be certain that it happens with my will, and I will ensure that whatever happens, it will not allow you to break. And he gave an example of it. He said many times this happened in instance of a student who felt that no, Swami was not looking up for a very, very long time, and he was about to be on the verge of cracking down. And Swami said, I was testing your love and faith in me. It's like testing a rubber band. I will keep on stretching, but I know up to what point I can stretch. I will ensure that it will not break. That is my promise. But stretching and bringing it back is my way of working. And he used to give this often example very often, which he mentioned in a lot of personal interaction also, that when I call you Bangaru, there is a purpose for which. Bangaru means gold. But then gold doesn't get a value by itself. He said, the moment I considered something as gold, what you do with gold, right? The goldsmith has to put it in fire, has to hammer it, has to draw it. That all has to be done for that gold to come, give a form of a jewel. So that you should allow me to do. This also in a personal interaction he has said. So the love, definition of love is not something which typically in the worldly sense that we look at it. Love is in a way another expression of surrender. It can come only with surrender, is my experience. With that surrender, when you develop that, or when you experience that love, that time everything that happens, you take it as a prasada buddhi. It has come as a prasad from Bhagwan, and that's how you will express his gratitude. And that will then form as a beautiful love story.
I think, that is one, I think that answers a question that typically comes up in every online Samarpan, because I think many of us are still reeling under the impact of the virus and the uncertainty around it. And if we treat it as Swami's way of, hammering the gold and, stretching it or whatever to make make us his Bangarus, I think we can, it's easier to live with this kind of situation.
I have a thought on that, Anushan, if I can share.
Please.
Even I used to wonder on this recent COVID scenario. But leave apart what comes in the media. Media is known for projecting one side of the story, and there may be some truth in that also. But at the same time, I have been actively involved as a part of Tata Group in a lot of COVID-related work, and I realized one side, of course, is the devastation that the COVID brought. But on the other side, there are so many instances of how people have come up with different ways of helping people. I mean, I know of doctors who have stayed for months away from their families because they didn't want their families to get impacted because these doctors were attending on COVID patients. I know of sort of new mothers who just have newborn kids, but they were doctors and they were going to hospital and they didn't want their child to get affected, and they were not in touch with their child for months together. There are so many people who have risked their lives to transport patients, to take care of patients who are in very devastating state, risking their own life. There are many people who have come up with the schemes of providing food or some sort of shelter. So in a way, there's one aspect we know it has impacted sort of negatively, but the other side is I think it has also triggered that sort of a sense of seva or helping each other is one. And second thing I thought, and I heard from many people, this that it has also sort of made people think about what life is. You can't take life for granted. No, typically the way it is taken in when we see around, people take it as it's a khana pina maja karna. It's not that way, right? Because if you, in one instance, somebody's alive, tomorrow he's not alive. When the life is so uncertain, then what is the purpose? And there must be something deeper in life that we need to examine. And I found many people reflecting on this and having a very good insight on life. So I think it has been a good sort of a trigger point to make people introspect and find out the bigger purpose of life. So that's, I thought it's a positive way of looking at the current scenario.
Definitely. Brother, if you could share one incident from your experience as a member of the Prashanti Bhajan group, since you're actively a part of it, and Swami is everybody knows Swami as a Ganapriya. You could share one incident related to music or your time in the Bhajan group as a tabla player in the physical presence.
Maybe I just remember one incident at this instance. It was my second year, 96, somewhere around July of 96. We were sitting in the Bhajan hall. That time the Bhajan would happen in the Bhajan hall Mandir, inside Mandir. And it was a wonderful occasion where we could sit next to Bhagwan and observe him. That day, I remember it was evening bhajan, and just before during the bhajans, it has started raining. So there was this cool breeze which was started flowing, and Swami was enjoying. And the bhajan group, one of the singers, very aptly he selected a bhajan which would suit that the season of rain, and he sang the bhajan was Ghana Ghana Neela Vadana Ti Sundara, appropriate rag for the occasion, and he was a fantastic singer. And the bhajan started, and Swami was enjoying that bhajan, and we were looking at Bhagwan and enjoying that bhajan as well. So as the bhajan proceeded, one line comes in that which is Manda Smita Mukha Radha Manohara. So when this line came, a thought just flashed in my mind. I said, Swami, Manda Smita Mukha. So why not you like to have your nice smiling, your beautiful smile? Swami was actually that time lost into ecstasy, he was enjoying. So I thought, if you give a nice, beautiful smile, it will be so appropriate. It's what thought flashed in my mind. Swami didn't respond. And I thought, this is a crazy mind's play, and moved on. And I was enjoying the bhajan. The second speed came, and the same line came again, Manda Smita Mukha. And again, this thought came in my mind. Swami, such a beautiful bhajan, such a beautiful ambience. एक थोड़ा सोने पे सुहागा हो जाएगा if you just give a beautiful smile. When this thought came again, immediately next moment, Swami just opened his eyes, looked at me. Right immediately after this thought came and looked at me and gave such a beautiful smile. I even now, when I recollect that moment, I get goosebumps. And as if to sort of, he doesn't need to respond, but I thought it was sort of a response to say that, no, I know what goes through your mind. I mean, I read every thought of yours. And it was amazing. This was one, and similar. One more incident was one another occasion. That day I was sitting in the first line, and as the bhajan was going on, I could see Swami's feet right about 2 feet from me on the footstool, and the Swami was moving his toes as per the beat of the bhajan. So when I looked at it, I remembered a thing which I'd read somewhere, that no, for Bhagwan, everything in his control. So even by moving his finger, no, the whole world can change. So that thought came to me, no, Swami, we are so fortunate to be in your presence. You are such an almighty, and we get a chance to sit at your feet, and your whole world is controlled by your feet and the way you are tapping. That sort of a thought came to my mind. And the moment that thought came, Swami looks at me very, very curiously and smiles and gives an indication as we are what is thought is right. And this, in fact, in one occasion, he has told me also personally, that we'll share on some other occasion. This was during when my brother Nitin got admission into Bhagwan's college, and it was a very dramatic experience. And when he got the admission into MBA course, he joined a year after me. And that day evening, we had gone to Trai Vrindavan to do some seva, and I was there, and I didn't realize Swami had just come out of his room and looking at us doing the seva. I didn't know that Swami is standing there, and Swami seems to have indicated that I should come there. So one student next to me said, "Hey, Swami is calling, just go there." So I quickly rushed to Swami and kneel down at his feet. And Swami asked, "Brother ko admission mila?" So I said, "Swami, with your grace, he got admission. He's selected and he's coming." It was a very dramatic event. I will tell some other time. So I don't have time for it. But the way the whole thing happened was very, very dramatic. And Swami made this statement: "See Ra, agar Swami ka will hona, पूरा दुनिया को ऐसा 180." Swami showed like this: "ऐसा पूरा दुनिया को turn कर सकता है. I can turn the whole world around like this if I have my will." And I was completely overwhelmed and bowed down at his feet and took his namaskar and said it was possible only because of your grace and blessings. So this is something which I thought I should share of my experience.
Extremely profound message, and to have been able to enjoy the proximity of it's very rare that Bhagwan has revealed his true nature when he said something like, "I can flip the world 180 degrees." I think it's a blessing that all of us have received to know of this master of the universe, master of the cosmos, and to be able to know him, recognize him, and choose to follow him. And what you said, really touched me when you said that even a small wish, Bhagwan responds, right? A small wish of wanting to see him smile. It may be like a very, very childish or childlike desire, but even that he answers. But the greatest message I probably draw from your session is, that Bhagwan has come to give himself to us. And our only task is to, achieve that patrata, or that eligibility to deserve him, and to have him with us in the form of his message, his teachings, the path that he has shown. And I think there is a lot for us to reflect upon his message, his values, his experiences, that we can take with us, think about, reflect about, and basically follow the 4 E's of examine, experiment, experience, and establish, thereby making our lives his message. So, brother, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights and thoughts with all of us, and our eternal gratitude to Bhagwan for making this one more Samarpan session possible, and for making this evening so lovely by having us all come together and listen to these wonderful experiences, reliving those moments with Bhagwan. So thank you so much, brother. And, we will end this evening with Samastaloka. Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की
जय.
साई राम everyone. Sai Ram.
Thank you.